Hello, my name is Sabrina Van Tassel. I am film director and a reporter, and I've directed The State of Texas versus Melissa.
My name is Melissa Elizabeth Lucio. I'm 48 years old. I have 14 children. I've been on death row 11 years.
There were bruises from head to toe. There were bruises on the face, in the hair, on the chest. This was the worst case of child abuse I had ever seen.
Oh my gosh. She fell all the way down. From the first step up there all the way down here. Imagine the baby falls.
The baby?
And did you see her fall, or did somebody tell you that that's what had happened to her?
I saw.
The interview was never presented to the court, and none of those kids ever said that their mom was beating up on Mariah.
It was during election time. Armando Villalobos was running again for DA. I'm the first Hispanic woman on death row, so this was a huge case for him.
Bribery was endemic. He'd be compensated for favorable treatment in criminal cases.
That was a plan, to put her away. My mother, poor, perfect target to help him win his election. She's no criminal, they're the criminals. They're the criminals.
That is a trailer from the documentary The State of Texas versus Melissa, and this is Factual America. We're brought to you by Alamo Pictures, an Austin and London-based production company making documentaries about America for international audiences. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Today we're talking about the American justice system again, this time is captured in The State of Texas versus Melissa, about the case of Melissa Lucio, the only Hispanic woman to ever be sentenced to death in the state of Texas. The doc had its festival release last year, winning rave reviews and Audience Choice Awards. Joining us is French-American journalist and documentarian Sabrina Van Tassel, who directed, wrote, and executive produced the film. We're also joined by my podcast partner in crime, Patrick Scott Armstrong, host of the Lone Star Plate, Factual America's sister podcast. Patrick interviews famous Texans and explores compelling Texas stories, and I recommend you give Lone Star Plate a listen. It's one of the more entertaining podcasts out there. Given my own Texas roots and the overlap between documentary filmmaking and a truly compelling story about Texas, we decided to team up. I hope you enjoy this special edition of Factual America. Sabrina, welcome to Factual America.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Patrick, while you're sipping your coffee, do you want to...
Welcome. Thank you, Sabrina. Thanks for joining us. This is awesome.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. So the film is this that at least the Factual America listeners have already heard. The trailer is the State of Texas versus Melissa. It released in 2020, at least in festivals. Is it on Amazon? Am I right? Is it on Amazon Prime and Hulu?
Yeah, it was released on Hulu in April.
Okay.
April
And what
15th.
about internationally, or do people just?
It's going to be released in the cinemas in France on September 15th.
Okay. Cool.
It's going to Cannes before, and it's going to the Deauville Film Festival before.
Wow.
And I'm hoping that it's going to be sold everywhere.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, congratulations.
I saw it on Amazon. That's where I watched it. Yeah, it was great. On my big TV, I was like, okay, I don't want to watch it on a laptop. You know what I mean? I was like, no. Yeah. This is it's biggest screen as I could get to with it. Okay, that's what I did.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's made for cinema, so I'm happy about that.
So welcome again. The State of Texas versus Melissa is the film, as our listeners have heard or watched on YouTube. On Amazon Prime, dropped on Hulu in April, and set for international release, and I believe a French theatrical release in the coming months. So thanks so much, Sabrina, for coming on to the podcast.
So The State of Texas versus Melissa is a film about a woman on death row. Her name is Melissa Lucio. She's been there for 13 years now. And it's not only about her case, but it's also the portrait about a woman who the judicial system did not treat right. There's many reasons why I wanted to do this film. I think a lot of wrongful convictions, if Melissa Lucio is one of them, have very flawed characters involved. And Melissa is one of them. She's a very imperfect, so to speak, character. She's someone who did not have an easy life, by all means. She was abused as a child. She lived a life of poverty. She had 2 children. She had a history of drug abuse. She had a history of going with the wrong men in her life, being involved with the wrong men. And once her daughter, was found dead, she was all of a sudden, the perfect target. And I think that there are a lot of people like her in prisons, unfortunately, because she checks all the boxes for the ideal culprit.
Yep.
So that's the reason why I wanted to do a film about her. And again, I mean, I do believe with all my heart that she is innocent and that she should not be where she's at. But even if she was guilty, I would still have made the film. I think it's most and foremost a portrait of a woman, against the entire system.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if I understand correctly, I mean, how did you get involved? Because this is not, I mean, going way back to whatever 2007. I guess it was a big case at the time locally in South Texas, but
it wasn't such a big case.
Yeah.
It was.
I don't remember it. I don't.
You don't remember
the
it, and most people in Texas don't. It wasn't a big case. It was, again, just another case of child abuse. And if you look at cases of child abuse throughout the United States, usually you don't end up on death row for child abuse. Okay, so the reason that it was a big case for the DA at the time, who was in the middle of getting reelected and who needed a case to be reelected, and he used her case. So it was a big case for him. But if you ask most people, and even people down in Brownsville, they've never heard of this case. It was very fast. It was like a 4-day trial. She was, guilty from the moment she was arrested.
Exactly right. They put the headline in, you read it, you're done. You move on. That person's guilty. Yeah.
She was done. She was arrested at 7 p.m. Her daughter was found dead at 7 p.m. By 3 a.m., she was indicted, basically. And end of story, no investigation. Then, the entire story goes on. Then she gets, a court-appointed attorney. She's up for 30 years. She says no. He says, no problem. We're going to win this case. Yeah. And, they go to trial. And then, no witnesses, no nothing. And then now she's on death row. So it wasn't a big story at the time. The way how I got to know about her case is a different story. I was working on a previous documentary for French TV about women on death row. And I was trying to look for women to interview. And I found Melissa Lucio. And at the time, she had never been interviewed by anybody. I mean, no journalist whatsoever had never, written anything about her. And if you, at the time typed her name on Google, there may be 2 local newspapers who said something about her case, but not more than that. And so when I went down to Brownsville, Texas to meet her family, and they were estranged at the time, which unfortunately is often the case for death row offenders. The family just gives up. They give up on them because there's no hope. So I went down there, and I remember entering a house full of her family relatives who said to me, "You're the first person who have come to knock on our door in 13 years."
And is it true you almost canceled the meeting?
Yes, I almost did. I almost did, because there was just nothing about her. Yeah. It was
open and shut case sort of thing.
But it was dull. It was a dull case. It was like, case of child abuse, and there's nothing to say, right? There's no American media has ever, paid any attention to the case. And usually when there's someone on death row, you can find all these, crazy shows about it, and there was just nothing about her. And so when they said that to me, I said to them, I'm like, well, surely her lawyers must have gone and talked to you, correct? And they said, no, her lawyers have never contacted us. We were never allowed to speak to her lawyer. We're never allowed to speak to anybody, and nobody ever paid attention about us and about her. And then they started telling me all these stories that, the little girl had, it was in fact an accident. The little girl had fallen down the stairs. The DA was in prison. The attorney, had gone to work for the DA. I mean, all these crazy stories. And I was just like, right. As everybody's, innocent in prison. So I was just, especially for family members. So I was just like, okay, great. So, but I was, it was just very, very bizarre. The entire thing was very peculiar. And then the next day I went and I met Melissa. And that was just a shock. I think it was a shock for both of us. And it was really a shock for me. I felt it, I felt it. I felt that, there was just something really wrong with her case, and I just could not believe that, she had done what she was accused of. It was just really hard for me. And I imagined this at the time. I could not, she was such a nobody that there was no way for me to find out who her lawyer was. I could not even find that, on the internet. So I said to her, could you please tell me the name of your attorney? And she repeated, she kept saying it to me. She spelled it for me. And then, I called her and I said, listen, I just spoke to your client, and I have a really bad feeling about this. There's something really wrong. And she said, oh, yes, I know she's been innocent for 12 years. But, she's done. There's nothing I can do about her, and she's going to be executed. And unfortunately, you're coming in this story way too late. And that's how it started, really. Because I was just, okay. She said, "Do you want to read some of her files?" And I'm like, yes, just send me everything. Yeah. And I spent the next couple of months just reading everything. I read everything about Melissa Lucio's case. So people can say whatever they want. The thing is, there is nothing in this case. There is nothing. Apart from a woman who gave up while she was being interviewed by 5, male police officers with guns, and who were threatening her and telling her she was never going to see her children again, and that, they already knew what happened, so she needed to just, let go. And she just basically gave up, and she said, I'm responsible for the bruising. She never said I killed my, she never said that. She never said I killed my daughter. She said, I'm responsible for the bruises. And that was it, basically.
Yeah, I know. It's a few things there. One thing, yours is not, I will say yours is not the first to document that there's something inherently wrong with interrogation techniques, certainly in the way U.S. police go around in cases like this. Won't go down the list, but how many of these things where they go in, they decide who's guilty, maybe the path of least resistance. And that's the whole point, is to get a confession, to coerce a confession and to get a result, I guess, and less about finding out what the truth is. Is that, I mean, that's what your film captures. Certainly in those scenes are just as damning.
You've seen the interrogation. Yeah. I think it speaks volume. And if you review all the Innocence Project, wrongful convictions, I think a good 50%, if not 60% of them had confessed. Mm. And so, that really doesn't mean anything anymore. And you have these police officers who, basically that's what they want. But it's the entire system. It's not only the police officers, it's also the forensic experts. Okay? Mm. Who, right away they see the bruising and they're like, oh, yeah, she was abused. And she was, that child is a victim of abuse. And so from that moment, once, that person writes homicide on it, then the police officers, this is what they want to get. They want to, they want to hear this, So it's like playing God almost. There's all these people who know the truth. I mean, there's a lot of things for me who are really hard to understand. First of all, if you really think that, Melissa Lucio should be on death row, why did you offer 30 years? I mean, there's kind of a big gap between 30 years and, and killing someone, I mean, if she is such a danger to society, why would you put her on death row when you just offered her 30 years? I mean, that for me does not make any sense. Second of all, the forensic experts who they know, right? But, in the film, I have another forensic expert who said the exact opposite of the first one. Yeah. So that's another problem. And then you have all these police officers who know. They saw her. I think the Texas Ranger who was interrogating her, he said in court that he knew she was guilty from the moment he saw her. So, I mean, there's all these people who know, and they play God, and there's all these, people who end up on death row or in prison, for life. And that's a big problem. I think there needs to be, I mean, I can go on and on, but there needs to be a huge reform. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, why is there even, I mean, not to take it there, but why is there even a death penalty to begin with? Right. Like that's, I mean, not to put my own personal opinion in there, but like, my God, this is a very deeply unsettling film for myself. I'm not going to lie. I was very anxious watching it. It was very personal. My mom's Mexican herself. Culture wise, it made me think like, how much does that influence how this woman, was in her life, how she got to where she was. The cops taking it, how much of that influenced the cops taking advantage of that moment, right? They see a poor, right, Mexican woman, 14 kids. Oh yeah, this woman did it, right? It's done. Once they hit that switch, it's like they're not going back. They're done. It's the ball's rolling. Like the one lawyer that you have at the end of the film, he basically sums it up, right? Like it's not to, he puts his own personal opinion in at I like how he did that. Like, well, just my personal opinion is she did what she did and now it's her fault and she's got to deal with it. That's the gist really at the end. That's what they all thought. And they put her on death row because of it. It's horrendous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just summed it up. I mean, she had too many children. For a lot of people, even today, even after watching the film, I mean, of course, most people are outraged, but some will say, oh, well, she was poor. Why did she have so many children? Oh, well, what did she use? But that has nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
I'm not asking you if George Floyd was a model citizen. It doesn't interest me to know, The fact of the matter is that Derek Chauvin killed him. And that's the end of the matter. That's all that matters to me. I mean, you don't need to have model citizens, in front of you in order, for them to be found not guilty. I mean, if I kept wondering if it was me who was arrested and my child had fallen down the stairs and, I'm white, I have that white privilege, right? And I would have convinced the cops for sure. I have no doubt in my mind. I would have said, you know what? I have a lot of children and one of my daughters, she fell down the stairs. You don't believe me? Okay, you know what? Speak to my lawyer. The thing is, Melissa Lucio did not even have the knowledge to know that she could have a lawyer, by her side. She had never been arrested before. She had no knowledge of all of this.
And those cops weren't going to tell her, right? Like, they're not going to help her defend herself. No. Like you said, right? They outnumbered her. They're in her face, right? You're that personal space that God, it's
they're lying to her. They're telling her that everybody has said it. That all the children has said that it was her. They're using all these techniques. Yeah. And she has lost her daughter, and she has not slept. I mean, she woke up that day at 5 a.m, and she hasn't had a drink of water. She wasn't allowed to speak to her husband. She, wasn't allowed to go to the restroom. I mean, it's just all these things that, play. And, some experts say that at some point you become convinced of what they're telling you. You're thinking, you know what, maybe I'm responsible. And she kept saying, I'm responsible. But, I think what she means is I'm responsible for this situation.
As a mother.
I'm responsible for having 2 children.
Yeah.
For this life of poverty, for not, being the mother I should have been. And she said that to me very often, actually, face to face. I should not, I should have been a better mom. I should have done, better for my kids. So,
But my mom says that, I mean, it's true, yeah. I mean, but maybe it's like my aunts say that about their kid, on my mom's side, the Latin side. It's almost like this very submissive. It's like I didn't do enough, but they did a lot, right? It's like, Mom, you did a lot. It's like, what are you talking about? There's always this constant thing of I didn't do enough, and how much did they use that against her? That guilt, right? They sort of used that against her and as a weapon, and oh man, it's tragic. Absolutely.
And you saw that in the film, how I put, the Virgin Mary and all, in this very Roman Catholic, community where the guilt is huge, and where the mom should be perfect, and where everything is in the hands of God.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to her family, the thing they kept repeating to me was like, well, if God wants to, in God's will, she'll be freed. And I said, well, how about, helping God a little bit, and trying to get her out of there, and do something. But it's that mentality of, we are, and they said it to me, that was something that was really heartbreaking. They said, we're the stupid people. We're the people that don't count. We're the people who don't know. We don't know how to talk. There's nothing we can do. And at the very beginning, when I started the film, the one thing they kept saying to me was like, what are we risking? Is something going to happen to us? Are they going to come after us? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's been so many years. I mean, what are you afraid of? But, the threat, especially in South Texas, is there. There is, it's a huge Latino community, but there's definitely, the ones who have power and the ones who have none. And if you don't have any, it's not a good place to be.
So, I mean, I think, again, that's the other thing. I mean, as you were already saying, playing God, it's this sort of, it's this condescending attitude, that prosecutor you mentioned, Patrick, who says at the end, well, this is on her because she could have taken the plea deal. Well, why is that the option? Why is that? It's, if you're innocent, you would proclaim your innocence. You don't take 30.
But this is not the way it goes. I mean, look at the numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are in United States that 95% of cases are won by the DA's office. 95%. They don't take a case unless they're going to win it. So your best option is to take the plea deal. And if he had been a nice person, he would have told her, take the plea deal, because you are going to be, eaten alive. It's never going to happen. You are never going to be free. But he wanted the money. And then, he got involved with the DA. I mean, of course, I strongly believe that. It's kind of peculiar that he went to work for him just right after the case, and that there's just so many things that he did not bring into the case. But, let's just say that he was the worst lawyer in history. I'll take that. He could have been honest with her and told her, listen, you have a dead baby. She's covered in bruises. And I mean, 30 years, she would have probably been out by now. I mean, he just really played with her life, but, he didn't really care. I mean, he hated her guts. I mean, there's just nothing about her that he liked. And
he didn't think she was a good mother, right? That's what he said.
He didn't think she was a good mother. He thought that she would be better off. And, he said to Melissa's sister at the very end of the trial, he said to her, when she was asking about the children, she wanted to get, Melissa's kids back. And he said to her, let them get lost in the system. Those were his words.
I mean,
thinking that, it would be best for them. I think people have very little knowledge and don't imagine the collateral damage that it creates. For people, not only on death row, but, in prison. Everybody wants to, lock everybody up for life. What about, the family members? And what about, how many generations does it take to recover from this? A lot. I can tell you, in Melissa's family, it's like an atomic bomb has exploded, and it's going to take generations, to get over this. Yeah, it will. And another thing you were referring about, the death penalty. You can check it out. I mean, unless you're poor, black, brown, disabled, mentally disabled, I mean, you're not going to end up on death row. That's not going to happen. If you have a little bit of money, if you have, a little bit, money, education, you're going to get out of it. People who end up on death row are people who are indigents. And that's a big problem.
And so, I mean, when you started this project, she would, as you said, her lawyer said, you're too late. Did the, and we can talk a little more about this, but did the win at the appeals, momentary win at the appeals court, did that occur while you were filming? What was that?
Yeah, that all of a sudden appeared at the end of the filming.
Yeah.
I mean, people kept saying, oh, Melissa Lucio, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Well, why are you interested in her? Why her? Why would you want to do a film about her? I mean, it was just all these things. And then, the entire town was talking about it. It was just a big thing. All of a sudden, we're talking about this case, and and then another thing is, I wanted to get some footage, so I went to all the local TV stations around Harlingen, and I was asking, I was like, I'd like to buy some footage about the Melissa Lucio case. I know that was a long time ago, but also about Armando Villalobos, and then right away we'd be like, oh, that's not for sale. That's not for sale. You can't. We're not selling this. Okay. So it was peculiar. And the feeling of it was quite incredible. And then all of a sudden, Margaret Schmucker, who was her lawyer at the time, was dismissed for other reasons. And she got a new lawyer. And then 6 months later, she won her appeal. And we were just like, wow, what happened? You know? Then the film came out. There was a lot of press. And right at the moment when you know, it started, you know, just we started talking a little less about Melissa just before the Hulu sale, just before, you know, the film was bought by Hulu in April. In February, all of a sudden, you know, she lost it again. And it was a very divided court. 7 of the judges said that she should have a new trial. 7 were against it, and 3 did not say anything. So she basically lost 10-7. So just the entire thing is just incredible. And now it's up to the Supreme Court, which takes 1% of cases a year. So we're just hoping that the fact that she's on death row, that she's a woman, that, you know, that the DA is in prison, for God's sake. I mean, 13 years. I mean, for an elected official in prison, I mean, that's a lot of years. That, you know, she won her appeal, and then, you know, that a very divided court, you know, reversed it again. You know, we're just hoping that, you know, the Supreme Court's going to pick up that case and do what, you know, should be done. But
that is truly her last chance, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Oh man, it's heartbreaking. You know, I think about the moment in the film where she talks about admitting of why she admitted to doing the bruising, right? Like to save her daughter, right? In some sense, right? This motherly, which I get, right? I absolutely get that. She's got 14 of them, right? So, but at the same time, you think, and of course, you know, thinking macro for her, but loving, right, that one child, but realizing, well, but if I go to jail, there's 13 more that need taken care of. What a dilemma to be in, right? So she's thinking, well, I don't want my daughter to go to jail. I don't want to admit for her, but I didn't do it, right? So I don't want to go to jail either. I mean, just what a predicament to be in. And, you know, I'm not saying the daughter did it, you know, the other daughter, I mean, but just from, you know, watching the film, I just thought that was interesting.
It was just such a big drama. And, you know, let's not forget that was 13 years ago, and that, you know, today, a lot of the things that were said at her trial would be junk science. You know, the DA who did the ending statement, which DAs never do, except, you know, in Melissa Lucio's case, you know, said that, you know, explained that, you know, it was the shaken baby syndrome, which could not have been since she was 2.5. And the shaken baby syndrome would have, you know, broken her neck, which she didn't have. So all that is junk science. And I think that if there was someone abusing in this family, it was definitely Alex, that she was fed up and she didn't want to take care of the children anymore. Do I think that Alex killed her? No, absolutely not. I think that, you know, she fell down the stairs and it took her 2 days to die because she had blunt head trauma. And she had coagulopathy, and, you know, her blood was not clotting anymore. And I think that would have been something that today they would have probably, you know, taking her blood, you know, right away, and, you know, and basically found that out. All these years later, it's hard to prove, but there's just nobody ever saw her being, you know, abusive to Mariah. There's nobody. So, you know,
or any of the children, right?
None of the kids.
Yeah.
None of the kids.
I mean,
none of the kids.
Right. Totally. It's crazy.
None of the kids. Someone would have. I mean, she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
There were, I think, 7 boys in one room. And then the rest of the girls in another. I mean, you know, the older girls were bathing the little girls. So, you know, if you see bruising, someone's going to say something at some point to someone. Nothing. So, you know, it's just the entire case is just a drama. And then all these years have gone by, and now, you know, she's it's really hard. I mean, she's been estranged from some of her children. Some, though, are still there and, and are fighting for her until the end. But, it's really, the thing is about Melissa is, the bottom line is she was the mom. She was responsible. Doesn't matter the way you see it. If it was her daughter who had abused the kid, she was the mom. She should have done something, whatever. She's just the one to blame. And I think that's another, big problem in our society is, well, what about the fathers? Really? Should really the mothers have all that blame always?
That's a great point. That was a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a good place to give our listeners a bit of a break. So we'll be right back with Sabrina Van Tassel, writer and co-director of The State of Texas versus Melissa. Art and entertainment inspire each of us in different ways. But have you ever wondered what inspires the people who create our cultural touchstones? On the Spark Parade podcast, your host Adam Unz geeks out with artists and entertainers about their cultural spark of inspiration. Everything from Shakespeare to South Park. You'll hear from artists like Connor Oberst on Northern Exposure, Roisin Murphy on Terrence Conran's The House Book, and Adrian Young on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. The Spark Parade, where artists reveal their cultural inspirations to spark the inspiration in you. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America.
Welcome back to Factual America. I'm with award-winning director Sabrina Van Tassel, who directed and executive produced The State of Texas versus Melissa. Festival release in 2020, out on Amazon Prime, and dropped on Hulu in April. I mean, one thing that's struck me about the film as I was watching it, and I think it's one of its great assets, is every time you'd be going through and I was like, well, she hasn't gotten so-and-so on camera yet. And lo and behold, that person would show up, eventually. Even the at best incompetent defense attorney. The only one who doesn't show up on camera, at least for an on-camera interview, is the corrupt DA who's in prison.
Villalobos.
Yeah, that was hard to get.
Yeah, I can imagine it would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have this great access. I mean, I'm not trying to make this just purely, try to change the tone or anything, but because I know, from what I understand, trying to get access to death row inmates in the state of Texas is almost impossible. Yet you've got...
well, I'm very persistent.
Okay. I bet you...
And I don't take no for an answer, and I had a lot of time. I not only directed this film, but I created my production company for this film. So I had all the time in the world. And that's really, when you're doing a documentary, time means, is worth a lot of money, really. Even the way you're directing, when you have the time to really, think about, what you're going to do, it's worth just so much. Peter Gilman took me a year and a half, her defense attorney. He did not answer any of my emails, never answered any of my phone calls. But since I was practically sleeping at the Brownsville courthouse, one day, I saw him coming right at me. And I knew his face. I knew what he looked like. So I said, Mr. Gilman. He's like, yes. I'm like, Sabrina Van Tassel. And he was like, oh, you caught me. And I'm like, why? Why do you think that? He's like, why do you not want to speak to me? And he's like, that seems like a trap to me. That's what he said to me. I'm like, why would you feel that way if you've done nothing wrong?
Exactly. He would be like, yeah, let's try to get her out. Like, right? Like, exactly. Yeah, let's talk about it.
And really, also the way I edited the film, the interviews are quite long. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they're not edited. because I wanted to show that I did not make these people say what they say.
Ooh.
Peter Gilman, if you hear his 1 hour interview, it's like an hour and a half, you'd think he's the prosecutor.
Yeah.
He has nothing nice to say about her.
That's what my wife said when we watched the film together. That's what my wife said. She said, "But dude, he has nothing nice to say about this one. You'd think he would be in her corner." That's what she said, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he starts off with, at least in the film, right? She's not a good mother. Blah blah blah. I mean, just yeah, I agree. It's
quite it was So I was just like listening. I wasn't aggressive in the interview. I just listened. I was just like, wow, really? That's interesting. And then when I asked him, I said, that's my only question in the entire film. The only question that you hear in the film.
Yeah.
When I said, did you know that somebody else was abusive to Mariah? And he was like, no, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Trust me, I wrote that down in my notes. That was one of my bullets. I was like, "Oh, stuttering defense attorney." That was like red flag for me right away. I didn't believe a word that guy said. Just again, not to throw my personal beliefs in here, but just like every gut is going off, like gut check. Just like, oh, this guy. I just didn't. I felt like he contradicted himself even. From the footage you showed in your film, because he mentioned that he didn't want to put the kids on the stand because he didn't think they were disciplined. But at the same time, he's also saying, I don't know if she's abused. Well, which is it? Are they being disciplined, and while that's happening, they're being abused, or they're not being disciplined? Like, what's going on? I don't know. I just felt like he, you know what I mean? It didn't seem like he even had the story in his head. It was...
Oh, he had no answer.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I asked him 7 times, at least, what was your strategy?
Wow.
I said, okay, what was your strategy? He couldn't answer. He had no strategy. He didn't. I'm like, what was it? Did you think that she fell? Did you think she was abused? He had no answer. He couldn't tell me. He had no clue.
Makes sense. That totally makes sense.
He just had no clue.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And, he could care less where she's at. I mean, none of these people really care less about, where she's at. I mean, she's just an animal, basically.
They all think she got...
one of the most dangerous women in Texas. That's why she's on death row. I mean, that's a nice thing that people should also realize is if you're on death row, you're the most dangerous person in America.
Sure.
You're so dangerous that you're separated from the rest of the carceral population because, you should not harm other prisoners. Now, really, do you really think after seeing the film, Melissa is a danger to other prisoners? I mean, just the entire thing is ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. But yeah, to answer your question, it was a lot of timing. It was a lot of persistence. Just basically trying to get to, even Daniela, her oldest daughter. It took me months to get a hold of her, have her speak to me, find everybody. I mean, they have been hurt very badly. So you have to take your time and respect that. Yeah. And understand that, they don't trust anybody anymore. Yeah. So I basically, I think, created a bond with them in many ways. And, I wasn't there to judge. I told them that very often. Like, I'm not judging you. I'm not even judging the sisters who are not writing. A part of me understands. I think most people don't, they say they're not in our shoes. And yes, they're not. When you have someone on death row and there's no hope anymore and she's already dead and she lives and her prison is 8 hours away.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't have any money, I mean, it's a big problem.
Yeah. How did they respond to the film? Seeing it.
They responded to the film very well. Of course, there are some teams, among the children. There's the one who are, Team Melissa, and there's the one who are Team Alex. So the one who are Team Alex think that, mom is already where she's at and she's going to die and let her, let's just get rid, Let's just
Move
get
on.
rid of her, and
Yeah. Wow.
nothing happens to Alex. And that's a drama in itself. But, you know, can you blame them? And the other side are, no, we're with our mom, and we want her out, and then there's all this conflict now among the family. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's a huge drama everywhere you see it. It is, and I just hope. I mean, the thing that I'm very happy about is that Melissa got so many letters from so many people after the film got released, and who said, who told her, we love you, we believe you, and that means the world to her. And she wants to fight, and she really wants to she doesn't want to die. There's a misconception where you think that some death row prisoners really want to get it over with. Most don't. They want to live. They want to see their children again. They want to live.
Yeah.
And they even get used to death row.
Would you do a follow-up? Would there be a follow-up film potentially?
If she ever got out?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Her chances of getting out are very slim. I was really hoping they would, commute her sentence, at least, that she would be, just in prison, allowed to, have some, physical contact at least, and have a meal with someone. Because when you're on death row, you're in solitary confinement. You don't share a meal at all. She hasn't been, sharing a meal for 13 years. And when she is outside, she's outside alone. So, a lot of people on death row go crazy. She hasn't. She still manages. I mean, she's so strong. And she writes a lot, and we write a lot to each other. And I'm just really hoping that, someone, that the Supreme Court's going to hear it, that, Innocence Project going to take the case, that some celebrities are going to, start tweeting about her case. I mean, something's going to happen. I mean, I'm just hoping. And even if that happens, doesn't mean that, she will ever be out.
So you think some celebrities sort of bringing some attention, you think that could help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if, Rodney Reed, Julius Jones, if it wasn't for the attention they got and, some celebrity endorsement, they would already be executed by now.
Well, what an impact that they could have, right? Wow.
Yes. So, I'm not, putting my hopes high on Governor Abbott. I mean, the only person that, he commuted the sentence to was a white male, which I think is very interesting. And that was 20 years ago. So I'm not, thinking he's going to become a good person all of a sudden, But yes, I mean, I'm hoping there's going to be a change of government, at least in Texas, that, they are going to review all the cases of Armando Villalobos. Let's just start there.
Absolutely. 100, right? Like, yeah, let's just start there. If you caught your bowling partner cheating, you would think every game before that, right? I mean, it just makes sense that you would just check all of his cases, and exactly, just starting there. There's no question. Oh man, that's so frustrating. Right? It's so frustrating. I can't even imagine what it is for you. Just as somebody watching it, does make you.
It's been crazy. It's been crazy. So every film selection, every news article, anything is great because it talks about her and it talks about her case, and and that's great. And it means that she's still alive. She's still there, and she's still there with us. But it takes so much energy just trying to reach out to people and trying to convince them. And sometimes I'm like, look, I'm just a filmmaker. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a great investigator, and I can tell you that there's nothing in this case. Just check it out. Just look. Look at it. But at the same time, there's so many cases like hers.
Yeah.
And advocates are just they tell you yes, but there's just so many.
They're overwhelmed.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed. They are. Except that it's a very urgent case now. I mean, if the Supreme Court refuses to hear her case, she could have an execution date by October.
Oh wow!
So this is serious.
How soon usually when they set an execution date does it happen? Is it a couple years? I feel like I should know this as a Texan, but I don't.
15 days.
What? 15 days?
Yeah. They can wait. They can wait for to set the date. They could take 6 months, a year, whatever. But once they pick a date, it's within 15 days. And then you have the Board of Pardons. So we put a petition online, asking already people to sign the petition for the Board of Pardons in case her case was not taken by the Supreme Court, to please watch the film, because it's a different thing to watch a film and to read a case. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a long battle, but I promised her that I would be with her till the end, and I will.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting this in my life. Don't
of course.
get me wrong.
Yeah, of course.
So is this why if I counted correctly, is this why you've entered so many festivals? I think I saw 23 laurels in your press pack.
Yes.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
I was just selected in 2 more over the weekend. So yes, it's
you're not going to be able to even see the poster for the film anymore. It's just going to be laurels.
I know. Well, the thing is, once you get selected in film festivals, it's like when you're not looking for a job anymore. They come to you and they say, submit, the film. We'll give you a waiver. So I was just like, yes, and yes, absolutely. Especially in times of COVID, when it was impossible for me to go, and everything was going on online. I was like, I'd rather just do that. But now I'm very excited about the fact that the film's starting. It was very important for me that the film would be released in the U.S. That's the most important thing. And now the fact that it's going to be released worldwide is also good, because I'm thinking, okay, they're not embarrassed, clearly. Let's have the film travel a little bit more now. Let's see how the rest of the world, sees the situation. And yes, you're right when you say that, it's not the first film and it won't be the last.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I guess all of us are trying to create awareness about a huge problem. There is a big problem with the justice system. This justice system, is completely broken.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would say actually it was designed like this. It was designed to put these kind of people where they're at, I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's a big problem. And so
they're very proud of that fact, right? Like even just watching the DA's commercial that you put in the film, right? It's all about we're tough on crime. I got a 99% conviction rate. It's all about, yes, putting away the bad guys, and there's nothing outside of that, right? It's all about being the sheriff with the badge and just getting people, and Wild West still sort of mentality, where it's not looking at these people as people that are going to go back into society, right? These are a lot of them they've made mistakes. I mean, going even outside of Melissa's, situation, just anybody that's brought into the court system, just our perspective, our lens onto what we look through is already wrong. We start off wrong. It's all bad. That's, again, not to put my personal opinion in, but again, the options that this young woman was laid out with, so long ago, they were already, the options were wrong just to begin with. It's like just a horrible system. You lose before you start.
Exactly.
Right? Like
an eye for an eye. And like Gandhi said, Gandhi said something beautiful. He said, an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how, what a better way to put it, really.
Well, the courtroom cheering when it's like we're about to put a woman to death. Yay! What? This is where are we at? When that happens. That's just a little disturbing to think.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like, I get that you may, if you're, I don't want to say happy is the word, but you're okay with the justice that you think got served, right? But at the same time, some sort of remorse of look at to the extent of what we have to do to get that, right? Justice. We've got to take this woman's life, and they're joyful about that, and that's crazy. That's like going to see when people used to get hung and going to the town square like with popcorn and right, like that was the thing. Like that's it's insane. It just lives in a different way now.
Yeah, it's Holy Sam, right?
Yeah.
Gladiator kind of justice. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think we got it all wrong. And, when I speak to people, they're like, yeah, but, some people, no mercy, let's just shoot them. And I'm like, well, that's just not the way it goes. It's going to take years. It's going to take 30 years. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You're worried about your money as a taxpayer, I mean, death row is the wrong answer. It costs millions,
That's a good point. That's a great point.
I mean, it's just not true. It's just not true. And in a system where right now, how many people are wrongly convicted? And, we found that out, every month? Every month we have something, I have Google alerts, right? Someone, was in prison 37 years, was proven innocent. Oh, that guy was executed 4 months ago. Oh, but you know what? The DNA, it's not his DNA. Okay, we have a problem, and in a judicial system like this, where there's just such a problem, you can't have the death penalty. Whatever way you want to see it, you just can't, and that's why it needs to be banned. That's it.
That's my personal opinion as well.
That's fine.
For everyone else listening or watching, obviously.
Well, I mean, that's what changed hearts and minds. I mean, this is years ago now, because you're saying it's going to take 30 years. Well, we were saying things like this 30 years ago, and it's still happening. The governor of Illinois, he was a proponent of the death penalty, and they had enough of these wrongful conviction cases that's when he put the moratorium on it. I'm not sure if it's still there's a lot of states where they haven't abolished it yet, but they do have a moratorium. I think we've got members of I don't know. It's hard to see how this is going to change, because I think, as you say, the word dramatic has been used quite a bit. It's a tragedy, isn't it? And I think these, even if this poor little girl Mariah had not died, they were already in tragic situation, and they were already in a very difficult place. And I think this, giving people the resources they need to have a fair shake. As much as I agree they should have it, and more so, I don't know. Again, it's the frustration for you as a filmmaker. You are there to shine a light on this and let people see it and come to their conclusions. But there's just, how do you create this public outcry? Because I think for the most people, Patrick, I'm here living in the UK, but you're in Texas. There's not even if the average person would say, look, I've seen the evidence. This now looks like something wrong was happened here. There's just, most people aren't thinking about the little guy or the little girl, however you want to look at it, in terms of these situations. It's kind of far removed. It's not they think it doesn't affect them. So there's just not this political wave or force to do, unfortunately, to change things.
Well, I don't agree with that.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Well, so how do you think it is? I mean, thank you for making this film. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, that's very much appreciated. But how do you?
I believe that strongly that Melissa would have already been executed if I had not done that film. So that's what I believe.
I agree with.
Second of all, I know that there was she had a page, I think, where there was 200 people on the page. Now there are thousands.
Yeah.
And she's receiving letters from all over the U.S. And people are fed up. They're not only fed up about they're fed up about so many things. Look what happened with Black Lives Matter. Look what happened. You talk about police brutality. Let's talk about the judicial system's brutality. Which is huge. People are fed up. And, that's another case where they're seeing this and they're like, okay, again, how many are there? So I really believe in the American dream for that, that, yes, people will make a difference, that people will advocate. There's just amazing people out there who are doing a tremendous job advocating and wanting to end the death penalty. And look what happened in Virginia. I mean, they just ended the death penalty in Virginia. I mean, that's just that was a couple of months ago. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I believe that one day that's going to happen in Texas. Believe it or not, it will. It might take a little longer. Yeah. But it will, and that's why we need to keep the fight, and we need to do films like this.
I guess what I was getting at is maybe to look at it this way, a different way. What would you suggest people who feel this way? And have been against the death penalty for certainly as long as I can remember. What do people need to do? Because what would you suggest? And thank you for making the film. You have social media,
right? You have Twitter and you have Instagram and you have Facebook. How about, sharing her face? How about sharing the petition? How about, there's a GoFundMe page, trying to, put some money so that her children go and visit her because she might not have a whole lot of time left. How about, writing the governors? How about, making noise? Because that's, what works at the end of the day. And I think we have amazing tools now, more than we used to, right? With social media, there's so many things we can do. And I think a lot of things are changing because of it. And so, I'm optimistic. I believe that there's a lot. I believe you can change things. And I believe that, Melissa will not. I believe strongly that Melissa will not be executed. I do. I think there's just been so many things happening. I mean, I have great faith that something's going to happen for her.
At the very least, another trial, right? Like something. Yeah. I mean, that's what I don't get either. Like at the very least, even if you think, look, the DA was arrested for 13. We need to this needs to be retried, like without a doubt, whether you agree with it or not, right? Like even that. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's just insane. I love your energy, by the way. I just got to say that I love your energy.
Thank you.
Much respect. Like your passion for it. Like I'm Latin. I got that like I feel you. Like I'm saying my blood is, but like I want to jump out of this chair and like I'm with you. Like I get it. You're right. It's what we need to push. It's what people need to do, and it's how things get done. If you don't think it's ever going to change, it won't.
It won't.
So, right, it won't.
Yeah, it won't.
And I think you're right. I think you're. Just a little side thing is, you made this point about it's not financially, right, beneficial to do it. That's and then again, not to take the emotion out of it, but that's a great way to reach conservatives in some way to get them to change their mind sometimes, right? Like sometimes it's just, let's get, however we can get them to change their mind about it. Maybe that's another way to push too as well.
It's quite strange, right? That they haven't looked at it because, when you have a case on death row, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And all the people on death row are indigents. So it's a good like $200,000 a year until they're executed.
Yeah.
Do the math. You don't want to pay for these people? You want them dead?
You know what the saying is, a bullet costs 2 cents, right? That's what they say, right? Like I'm just being real. They say that in Texas here. I hate, but it's what they say. That's what you'll hear a conservative say here, right? And it's like, but they're not looking at the whole thing. They probably just don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like liberals and, the left here, myself included, like, we need to push that narrative even a little bit more, which I remember hearing that a long time ago. It just kind of slipped away because it's not talked about enough. But you're right. I think just hitting it from different angles to get people to realize, people to realize this is not the way to go.
A death row case costs millions to the state. And then, then you need to pay for the lawyers. And that's a good $200,000 a year, at least, until they're executed. And that goes until their execution date. And then you need to, build a second, another, space in the prison with special wardens. I mean, just the entire thing costs so much money. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So if you're thinking about the money, I mean, for sure, death row is not what you want. But I think that what we need right now is we need Joe Biden to actually, put an end to the federal death penalty. That would be a great signal. And then we need, all the states to basically follow up, I mean, that's one thing we need.
All right.
Like it.
Well, and just to say that I think Melissa's very fortunate for you to have found her, actually.
I was very fortunate to found her too.
Yeah.
I agree with both of that. Absolutely. Both of y'all, right? Like, absolutely 100%. Well, that's awesome.
So, what's next for you, Sabrina?
Well,
after all this,
still very much involved, as you know, as you heard. I'm doing another film right now about guns in America, and I'm preparing a new feature about the Indian world, Native Americans, and what they suffer as well. I guess I mean, a lot of things that I do. I mean, I'm trying to be a messenger for people who have no voice. So that's what I try to do. And finding a public for that.
Yes. And I think self-described as a French-American journalist and documentarian.
Yes.
But, my podcast is sponsored by Alamo Pictures, which does docs about America from more of a European perspective. And what does that add to you, do you think? Does it give you a sense of insight that you don't think maybe even American documentarians have, even though they will have touched on these subjects?
So I'm really like, my mom is French, my dad's American. I grew up in both countries.
Yeah.
I vote in both. My family was very involved in politics in the U.S. My grandfather went in front of, the McCarthy committee. So, I mean, it was a big deal. So just being, seeing things I see things from a different point of view, right? I mean, being French as well, and seeing how, they deal with problems, and, how in the U.S., we deal with problems, I mean, has certainly given me a lot of, I'm seeing things in a different way, and it's easier for me to kind of expose them. Yeah, definitely. And trying to have also the world understand, because you see, I mean, when you're European, coming to the U.S., the difference between, what's federal and what's state, and, and the justice system, which is so, different, and so many things, the fact that, we are socialist countries, and, and that we have free, healthcare, and all these things, and that in the U.S. you don't. It's very different. the thing that I can say though is Americans, what I like about it, and that we lack, I think, in Europe, is that, there's a lot of people who really want to make a difference and who want to change the world in a very genuine way. You know what I mean? Saying, you know what, we're gonna do this. We're gonna fight against this. We're gonna get united, and we're gonna do all this. And as Europeans, we don't have that. We're lacking that. We're a little like, yeah, right, it's not going to make any difference anyway. Why bother? So, that's the difference. So there's good and there's bad. And I guess being European and, living abroad, gives me that, that perspective.
And then as you've made scores of documentary films. How have you, do you work as an independent? Because I think, how do you manage this? It's quite, any advice you'd have for anyone starting out? Because it's quite a challenge to try to, to have achieved what you've achieved is quite impressive. How do you, what's driving you?
Injustice.
Yeah.
I think we're all good at something, right? And my advice to other filmmakers, if you want to be in documentary, is that you need to find the little something that you have that, is different from the rest, and I guess for me, having that dual culture definitely helped, because I was like, yeah, I got this. I'll explain it to you. You don't get it? Yeah, no problem. I'll explain it to you. And also being driven. I was always an independent. I never worked for a production company
or broadcaster or anything.
No, I was always, independent. Most of the films, that I did were produced by networks. They were already, so they'd be like, you want to do this, go ahead, whatever. But I was always very driven in what I wanted to do, the topics I wanted to do. I never really, or almost never, did something that I didn't like. And I think I was very fortunate in doing so. I think accepting to do something that is not you, it might seem like a good idea at the beginning because you need to work, but in the long run is not a good idea, because you're just going to go in the wrong path. And also, I was so determined at the very beginning when I started my career that even if I wasn't paid, it wasn't a problem for me. I was like, I just want to do this. And so a lot of the big, some of the my big films, the ones where I spent years, because some I just did for the networks, and it went really fast, and some I really gave my heart to them. Those were a necessity. They were something that I needed to do, a story I needed to tell. And usually you see it, you feel it when you see a film, where you see something like, you feel it. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm just, I do.
But exactly. And I think it's, you could say it almost about any profession. You need to have that drive. You need to have that passion and for what you're doing. I think I'll put my hand up. I've certainly sold out, if you will, and done things that I thought, I've got to get shoes on the kids' feet. But did it actually? It ended up being a dead end, really. When you go in that direction, if it's not true to, it sounds cheesy, but true to who you are. I think you can make justifications for these things, and then it ends up 5 years down the line, you're wondering why did I do that?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Why am I doing this? Exactly. And that's, I think what was also, I guess probably, I don't know, I guess we're it's been lovely to chat with you, and you've been on for a little while now. But this, I think it was mentioned elsewhere. You purposely wanted to make a cinematic film, and you've achieved that. Do you? Should we give some shout outs to some of your your director of photography and stuff? I mean, it is a beautiful film that you've made.
Yes. Yeah. We've been working together for so many years. 15 actually. He's directed. He did.
This is Cyril Thomas.
He worked on Cyril Thomas.
Yeah.
He worked on almost every single film I did, and we know each other so well. And
yeah.
He has not only is he an amazing DP, but he has this amazing empathy. And he's someone that I can bring, and I know that he will listen to people, even if it takes, hours, and he will stay for dinner if they invite us, and, all these things. And that's very important. I mean, don't go into documentary if you don't like people, basically. That's my advice. If you're not interested in human beings, don't do this.
Yeah.
Do something else.
Exactly.
It's like a chef who hates food.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And he's just an amazing human being like that. And he understands.
That's awesome.
He's very smart in the way he films. And I think, his work is pretty phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it was... and having South Texas roots myself, I thought you captured it brilliantly.
That's Texas. All
that's
right.
Texas. That's sunlight.
Look, I'm here, y'all. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
I'm telling you.
But you're up in
that's
Dallas.
Texas.
Yeah.
hey, listen, Texas is Texas. Don't get twisted.
No, South Texas is very different.
All right, there are different parts, of course.
And then also, I mean, I wasn't meaning to imply that
I've taken the bus through there, by the way, y'all. I don't know if y'all have driven through. I've taken buses straight to Mexico City from Dallas. So I've been through all different parts. Lots of times.
I was supposed to take a bus to
when I was a
Monterey
kid, we
once,
did that very
Yeah.
often. I'm not going to lie. I think when I was about 30, so about 10 years ago, when I lived in Mexico in Veracruz, that was the last time I did it because it was pretty dangerous, actually, when I crossed. So, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again.
It's such a flat country. It's such a flat state, right?
Sure.
That
part of it, the
Yeah.
north. But once you my family's from Mexico City, so that part of La Montaña, it's right. It's deep in the valley. You've got that's why there's so much smog. Blah blah blah. I mean, I could go on.
Yeah.
Mexico doesn't get enough credit for actually how beautiful the country is, how much countryside and waterfalls and mountains and it's just such a beautiful country that doesn't get explored enough or talked about enough. Sorry, not to change the subject.
No, I think it's, partly talking about being evocative is the other thing is not too many death row docs have their own soundtrack. And I think that was also well done in terms of, who is it? Is it 100%. Christophe? Is it Christophe Lapinta?
Christophe Lapinta is a very well-known film composer here in France. We met at a film festival. I had done a previous film about Drancy, which is a concentration camp in France, which has been turned into social housing. So I did a documentary about that. That was interesting.
Wow.
And he saw my film, and I heard his music, and he said to me, I'd love to work with you. And then shortly before I started the State of Texas versus Melissa, he called me and he said, hey, how about we work together? So I went to see him at his studio, and I was just like, you know what? That's a great idea. I don't have the money. and he's like,
he says, not a problem.
He's like, sign me up. Yeah.
I don't have anything.
So instead he negotiated 50% of the back end or something, but no.
So he said to me, listen, I'll keep the rights, and I'll do the music, and you'll just pay for the mix, basically.
Wow.
Just like, okay.
It's amazing.
And then I would basically send him, part of the editing, and then he would just compose on it. It was just quite amazing. And then one day he calls me and he's like, do you know about Dominic Miller? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, it's one of the most famous, guitar player right now. He is Sting's, Sting, lead guitar player. And he, composed Shape of My Heart. And I was like, right? He's like, well, you know what? He's going to do the guitar.
Wow.
On your film.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. And then the guy was like on tour. And he was only 2 days in Paris because he's married to a French woman. And he came to the studio and, he just took his guitars and just, put the guitars on the music. So I had like a lot of these little angels, on my path, which also told me, because I believe in that strongly when I'm making the film, sometimes all the doors close and sometimes they open. And I believe in that. I sometimes believe that, maybe this story needs to be told. Maybe we need to do this.
Yeah.
Some films happen and some don't. And when really it's too hard to make a film, when it's just, it's impossible, now I just give up. I'm like, you know what? Universe doesn't want me to do it. I'm not going to fight anymore, But, for this film, it was like, it was open. That's why, I strongly believe that, it's not over.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
We'll talk about it.
Yes, we'll have you. If we haven't scared you off, we'll love to have you back on, especially if things go hopefully as they do. It would be a great. You talked about a follow up. We'd love to do a follow up if that happens as well. So
if Texas ever allows me to come back.
Oh, don't be silly. You can. They don't check anyone at the airport.
I'm kind of wanted right now,
hey,
but
listen, it's a big state. I promise. It's a big state.
It's a big state, and
believe me, you can get lost there pretty easily.
How diverse it is, and
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
soon you guys are going to turn blue, so that's going to be nice.
I think we're right. We're close. There's a lot of people get scared. I'm like, let's finally. That's why I said, finally, let's do this. Because I love this state, but there's definitely some things about it that are uncomfortable. It's funny, not to take away, but like I when I lived in Spain for a few years, I remember that the only conversation people wanted to have with me was about Texas's death penalty. That was it. That's what people really find out. We're from Texas, bam. That's all we're talking about the rest of the night is why we have the death penalty. So it's a big... it's a bigger conversation than I think Americans even realize.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's true.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm glad you did this film, and I'm glad Melissa has you, like was mentioned earlier, and here to support it. So I'll do what I can for sure. I'll give you that promise to myself, and to you, and to Melissa and her family.
Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you. It's very, very much appreciated you coming on, and it's been lovely to talk with you. And you still got a little bit of time left in the Paris evening, so do hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Bye.
First of all, I'd like to say thanks to our special guest, Patrick Scott Armstrong of the Lone Star Plate podcast. Definitely check out his show, whether it be on traditional podcasting channels or YouTube. His most recent episode is with Stephen Tobolowsky and is definitely not to be missed. If you have any questions regarding how you can become a documentary director and producer like Sabrina Van Tassel or other roles in the industry, I recommend you check out careersinfilm.com to learn more about careers in the film industry. A shout out to Sam and Joe at Intersound Audio in Eskirk, England. And a big thanks to Nevena Paunovic, our podcast manager at Alamo Pictures, who ensures we continue getting such great guests like Sabrina onto the show. Finally, a big thanks to our listeners. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas, whether it is on YouTube, social media, or directly by email. And please remember to like us and share us with your friends and family wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off.
You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.